Okay, we are back. Okay, we're gonna wrap up the revision and redo of Unit 1 again. Unit 1 for the Social 30-2 class. It's gonna help you a lot on your essay to figure out very clearly what is collectivism, what is individualism, and where these ideologies fit, okay? We finished up talking about collectivism yesterday. We're gonna talk about individualism today. Does anyone remember the acronym for yesterday's? For collectivism? Princes, okay? Princes, and for individualism, it's prices. Okay, so always go back to this main pink slide to get you the basic information. But individualism is a ideology, it's a system of belief, the basis of which is this idea that we are all unique. This idea that you're all unique individuals. You know, you have your own beliefs, values, preferences. You see the world in a unique way. You have your own personality. You do things in a very unique and individual way. Even if you're twins, doesn't matter, right? You're your own unique person. Okay. The focus is on the individual, and it emphasizes things like private property, rule of law, individual rights and freedoms, competition, economic freedom, and self-interest. Again, grade 12 is very likely, like there's only 4 or 5 different assignments they give you on your diploma for the first essay. Okay, and it might be, hey, which of these values is important to individualism? Picking any one of these, 2 or 3 of them, is going to get you the best opportunity for the highest marks, right? You're picking the correct values. Okay, so if you're reviewing for your diploma, which you should do, don't go into that without studying. Don't do what I did, kids. Okay, be better than me. All right? Go review that slide, okay? Individualism focuses on the role of the individual in relation to society. So what that means is, you know, what is your job as an individual? So earlier he mentioned to vote NDP. So it's good that you're telling people that they should go out and vote. I don't know, how many of you are older than 18? So a couple of you might be able to vote. I don't know if they have a cutoff, because the mayor, or not the mayor, the premier, they did this thing called dropping of the writ. I don't know, just some old ancient way to say, hey, we're gonna start the election process. Okay, so it's good, right? Your individual responsibility in society might be to vote, right? On that rule of law, rights and freedoms aspect. But maybe you shouldn't tell people who to vote for, right? Some of the roots and some of the history, some of the more background on individualism. In contrast to what we discussed yesterday, so 10,000 years ago, before there was a Walmart and a Costco and a grocery store and ships to transport food around the world, you had to find food in your local area. Many people lived in hunter-gatherer societies. They hunted animals, or they gathered whatever fruit, berries, little like vegetables, honey as well. Honey was like a very commonly gathered item back in the day. That's how you got your food. So you had to rely on the people around you. Now in modern society, you know, if you have a job and it's a well-paying job, you can pretend like you don't have to rely on people around you, because, you know, how many of you live in a house that you built, right, or your family? I can't tell if you're joking or not. You didn't build it with your own hands.
Yeah, I did. I did.
The one here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Whatever did.
We'll explore into that. How many of you grow your own food? All the food you eat? All the food you eat? No. Right, so we still rely on other people, but we rely on them through an exchange of money. So somebody else spends their time growing food, building houses. A lot of people spend their time, you know, 4, 5, 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off in the oil fields, making sure that we have electricity, we have gas to put into our car, that we have heating, although we don't really need heating too much now that it's like 30 degrees. Right, so we still rely on one another, but this idea of stressing the importance of personal autonomy, okay, which is essentially for you, the capacity for you to make your own choices. Right, like how many of you got to choose which courses you can pick for your grade 12 year? Little bit of freedom in there, but you really can't choose. Like you have to take Social Studies 30 level for your diploma. And if that wasn't a requirement, I'm sure probably half of you would not take this course. Right? You don't have to take a Math 30 or a Science 30. Or you need to take that up to a 20 level for your diploma. So there's some freedom, but then there's other freedom that's not granted to you. Right? So personal autonomy, self-reliance as well, the quality of being solely responsible for one's own well-being. Which means that, let's say life isn't going so well for you. In the more individualistic belief system, you are responsible for your life being bad. Doesn't matter what your skin color is, doesn't matter what your religion is, although these things can have an impact, but at the end of the day, whether or not you're a guy or a girl, it's up to you to make your life better. Right? And I would say that holds fundamentally true. There's some stuff in here about property rights. The Romans and Greeks also had various emphasis on individual rights and freedoms. Individualism is more of a modern invention. Once we were able to work more efficiently, produce food more efficiently, it's a lot easier for us to not have to, rely on people as much. Okay? Or spend your whole day just out in the field growing food so that you can eat later that night. We can do a bunch of different things, which is quite nice. So in the more recent times, so last 500 years, we begin to see more documents forming which solidify the rights of individuals. We already studied some of those. So the Declaration of Independence from the Americans, right, about 200 some years old. It clarifies and states that individuals have rights that are given to them by God, that they are inherent within them. So you being born a human means that you have certain rights. No one can take that from you. Right? Which obviously, if you look at the history of America and the use of slaves, they really had to question their belief on that and how much they were going to act that out. Should make sure we're paying attention, listening and following along. Okay, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, like many other documents, particularly like the French Charter, equivalent document. Yeah, it gives you your rights and freedoms, but it also has this note at the front that says, well, if the government can prove that you should have those rights restricted, then they will restrict them. They're no longer yours. So there is a fundamental difference between these documents. Okay, but as the middle point would suggest, there's this emphasis on the individual, valuing their life, their freedom, which is liberty, their property, the right to vote, speak, and think freely. These are all values that we expanded upon in the second unit, which we already did. Okay. This third point really emphasizes and reiterates that even if you choose to be an individual and live in your mom's basement and eat Cheetos and play video games all day, or scroll through Instagram or TikTok, you're still relying on this infrastructure and cooperation of a bunch of people. Like even if you just want to lay in bed and scroll through Instagram all day, well, if you're connected to the internet, people work to make sure that the internet stays online all the time. Does anyone recall sometime within the last year, the internet services went out and people couldn't use their credit card or debit card? Did you recall that? A couple of us recall that, right? That was a good reminder that we do rely on other people, even though we're in a more individualistic society. Okay. So going into some of the values of individualism, private property is a main consideration. This idea that you can own things, land. Obviously, people comes to mind, and we did that at some point in our history. It's very common all around the world. Right, but the fact that you can actually own things and potentially give them to your children or to your family members, very important, right? It's not that the king owns all the land or the government. You can buy it from someone, paid off completely, and now it's yours. Sure, you'll still be taxed on your houses if you have those, but you can take that house that you own, you can change and say that, hey, I'm going to put this house in this person's name so that when I die, they own it, they inherit it. Right? But that's private property. Okay? Based on the private ownership and operation of property, potentially for profit, if that's what you want. right? So many people have this dream, this idea, you know, they want to live on an acreage, have a small little farm, and in a more individualistic society, one that allows for private property, you're allowed to do that. You know, you can have your animals, you can have your garden, you can have your homestead, whatever you want to call it. It's yours. Let's please turn the music off. Thank you. Let's not have our phones out. We should be following along with this. Okay.
Yeah, we should putting them on your phone for a hotel.
We should.
I did.
Thank you. Okay. So John Locke is someone who would emphasize that with private property, it's important that you also make that property, what is the word here, productive. So does the field outside, for those of you who can see it, does the field look like it's being productive right now? No. So earlier, who was in the gym class earlier? A couple of you. What were you guys playing out there? Football. So when a group of students is using that field for gym class, playing football, whatever it is that field productive then?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? We're actually using it, right? It's beneficial. Are we making money while you're playing football? No, right? We're not necessarily losing money, but we're at least utilizing the field, right? And so that's something that John Locke would really emphasize. It's what private property emphasizes, that you know the land should be productive. Because if we just let the field stay like that, nobody comes and cuts it, the grass is just going to grow long, and then it's not usable, right? And I don't know, apparently there's a grass fire going on in Edmonton, which maybe there's grown out grass or dried grass, whatnot, that's now on fire, which is not good. Couple memes here, okay, one with a typo there. But yeah, when you own property, you're allowed to dictate who's allowed to be on it, what they do, right? Now, obviously, during the COVID lockdown situations, people were throwing private parties, and they were essentially selling tickets for people to come and party, and then the government would shut them down, saying, well, there's a law in place that says, no, you can't gather, right? So that's just re-emphasizing how, even though in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you have this right to gather peacefully, more or less, there's a right for you to just be in a group of people. If the government decides that, hey, actually there's some sort of health crisis and you can't be in a group of people in a small space, well, too bad, right? Your private property right goes out the window, right? Typically the sign says violators may be prosecuted, which is a process in the court system, if you trespass on property. If you don't know how to spell, you might say shoplifters will be prostituted, so which you may or may not enjoy.
That sounds like shoplifters.
Okay.
Kawaja into that shit. Kawaja like that.
Keep your own thoughts to yourself. You like that. So this guy's here saying Tommy's mom said people shouldn't own private property. This old timer is responding. Some of the richest people on the planet say the same thing, but they never give away all of their own stuff. Okay, so it's a sentiment that's believed by people who believe in private property. We won't go down that. Okay. And then this meme's kind of funny. So in some places in America, in some places in parts of the world, if somebody's on your property and you don't like that, you're not sure what they're doing, you can potentially shoot them. Yeah.
I do like this.
Okay. But if you decide to shoot the person, there is still this thing called the rule of law, right? There are still legal systems in place, right? So maybe you shoot this person from a distance, right? Like there's two people on the field right now, they're playing with some dogs, you think they're trespassing, so you just get off the property, right? Then the court says, hey, why'd you shoot this person? They're on my property. Was it within your right to shoot the person? Were they presenting a threat to you? Were they a danger? And I don't know, depending on the type of property, sure, if it's the government's private property and they tell you you'll be shot on sight, you better not set something. You're gonna be shot on sight. But if you're a private individual, I don't know, maybe you could get into trouble with the court. Which means that the rule of law doesn't really exist, right? So, anyways, rule of law is equality before the law. So it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you make, or how much charity work you've done, or, you know, we'll just simply look at you, your history of crime, what you did, and generally speaking, what the punishments are. Which, you know, doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes some people, some companies get off the hook, they get let off because, you know, they have some sort of influence on the government, right? But in a properly classical liberal society, in a more individualistic society, you have this rule of law where, you know, groups and individuals don't have this arbitrary power, meaning they can't just sway the government and say, no, actually, you know, because I'm some big corporation owner, you can't send me to jail. You know, I make all this money. You can't send me to jail. I'm not a normal person. I'm not a peasant, right? Or if you're like Pablo Escobar, you know, you just set up your own prison. You just throw parties in there.
Pablo Niño de la Vida. Escobar. Yo, hey, hold up.
Yes.
So say boom, I'm walking in the street, right? And then some dude pull up and he's about to bop. But I shoot him instead.
It really depends where you are. In Canada?
Yeah, in Canada, like here right now.
In Canada, we don't have a lot of good self-defense laws.
Shit.
So like, let's say you break into my house and I fight back. I can still go to jail for that in Canada. It's actually really absurd. Whereas in America, there's on YouTube, there's a news report. They played the phone call this guy made to the police. He's calling the police. He's talking about, oh, I'm barricaded in my room.
Yeah.
You need to send police. My house is getting robbed. I already shot one of them, but I don't know where the second guy is, right?
Yeah.
And the operator, like, this is in America, so this guy's allowed to defend his property, his home. And this guy's like loading up his gun. You can hear that in the video. And he's telling the operator, like, I don't know where he is, but when I see him, I'm gonna shoot him. And the person's saying, like, no, don't do that. Like, wait till the police arrive. And then, I don't know, like a minute later, he's like, oh, I see him. Bam! Like he, yeah. But in Canada, if that operator tells you, well, first of all, I don't even know. I'm sure you just get in trouble for owning the gun, right? And then having the bullets on you.
You
can own guns. Yeah, you can own guns if you have
It's
a
hard to
file.
own a gun in Canada.
It's hard, right? It's
Not really. No, it's like $150 to take the test, and if you pass, then you're okay.
Well, you can't get
there's,
hold of no
there's
nice
one
guns with
license
you.
for like just rifles and stuff, and there's
Yeah.
another one for handguns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got
Yeah, so like if you want a hunting rifle, you can have a shotgun, right? And that'll take care of any home intruder. But the Canadian laws are like you can't have the ammo and the gun in the same spot, I don't think.
You can, if they're locked up.
Even
That's why there's ammo crates. If you
But
have
hey,
a gun
actually,
safe,
that's on
then you
my
put the
bed,
guns in
yeah.
there and you take
Pull
an
up,
ammo
right?
case, put them in there, and you put a lock on it, then you have a problem. You have to have 2 layers of safety on them at all times, otherwise they can't be in your household.
Okay. Okay, but so just reiterating, so in Canada we don't have a lot of good self-defense laws, so I don't think you'd be allowed to shoot someone for breaking into your house, right? Which you know, and this person who's breaking the law can have a gun, they can shoot you, right? Like, it's a bit crazy. You know, so ideally you don't want to have some people who are above the law, that it doesn't matter to them, right? Some people maybe feel that way about the police. Did you kids hear there was some police officer in Edmonton? I don't know if there's a video of him doing this, but people had reported this guy kicked somebody while they were down, like his head was a soccer ball, and is now on paid leave from my understanding. Right? So they're trying to investigate, but
That was Tony. Tony Chin.
no, but I didn't ask him about that.
He probably fighting with that guy.
I don't know, there was a photo of him at McNally. Maybe he was one of the SROs there.
Tony?
No, this guy.
Oh.
The only reason why I clicked on the article was because he's standing in the gym at McNally, which for the record is where I went to high school. It's like, what? Did some kid at the school get kicked in the head? I don't know who it was, but anyways, that police officer is now on paid leave. Right, so for the record, you know, if I were to kick one of you in the head, I would not be on paid leave. I'd be on vacation to prison.
Shit, they like you in there, boy.
That's so. You know all about the inside, wouldn't you?
Nah, but I just assume it down, boy.
Okay, individual rights and freedoms. This can include your freedom of religion. So even in this, like we're in a Catholic school, you know, I myself am Muslim. There's a couple other brothers in here that are Muslim as well. There's a few people at the school who have a different religion. Okay. You have the freedom of association, so you're allowed to be friends with who you want and hang out. You have the right to life, liberty, the security of the person. Right? So it's kind of interesting in Canada, like if somebody breaks into your house and have a weapon and they're threatening you, where does your right to life meet their need? Like, are you allowed to protect yourself? Which in Canada, those laws are pretty, they're not definitely not supportive of the person who's being broken into their house. We already emphasized that second point. So the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada does state that rights and freedoms can be restricted to such reasonable limits prescribed by the law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. So this might mean that the majority may rule over the minority, which means that essentially what they're saying is that if the government can demonstrate a justifiable reason to take away your rights, they can and will. Right? So I don't know, if 80% of the people want something done and 20% don't feel comfortable with it, you know, the 80% can potentially have that change made into place. And then obviously in our second unit we went over how more and more people got included into these rights and freedoms. So we looked at the example of voting rights. Women did not gain the right to vote at the same time. Some women got it before others, and some of them definitely got it after many men had the right to vote. In England, the right to vote was not given to all men at the same time either, of all ages. In America, I don't know too much about their voting rights in America, so I won't talk about that. But in terms of individual rights and freedoms in America prior to the civil rights movement, a lot of black Americans did not have the same rights and freedoms as white Americans did. Okay. So competition. I have a couple different definitions here. So the textbook defines competition as an act or instance of contending with others, seen as an incentive to work harder and more efficiently. So you're going head to head with other people, you're competing, trying to get better work and more efficient work, working quicker. The Merriam-Webster has two different definitions. A is the effort of two or more parties acting independently to secure the business of a third party by offering the most favorable terms. Okay, so two people, two businesses are competing to provide you the best service, right? So maybe you want to get new tires. Okay, so one company says, you know, $250, we'll get you your tires and we'll put them on your car for you. Another one says for $250, we'll get you your tires, we'll put them on for you, and I don't know, we'll like clean the inside of your car, right? They're offering you more services for the same amount of value or money that you put in, or maybe they offer it cheaper. So who are you gonna go to? Maybe that place that says, hey, $200, so it's $50 less, for a new set of tires and we'll put them on you, but so many people have complained about their service. So although it's cheaper, it's lower quality. So maybe you as the consumer aren't gonna go buy it. Right? Like how many of you choose to go to the convenience store over the cafeteria food? Or let's just say like ordering your food. What's that?
They both trash.
So where do you go for lunch?
She.
Do you eat lunch?
Yeah.
Where?
Consistently.
Okay, yeah, you go to the concession even though you don't like it. If the school offered bubble tea, girls, would you buy it from the school?
Hell no.
Well, you're shaking your head no, right? So competition. Some people offer a better product.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Active demand by two or more, okay, that's more of a biological thing. The word competition comes from two Latin words, which means to seek together, to come together, to strive in common, strive after something in company with or together. So it's interesting, like these definitions have a very different understanding. You know, the Latin history of the word does talk about groups of people coming together to pursue something, to seek it. Right? So there is this idea that we do merge with one another to get the result we want. Oh, I want to see about the other side. At this point, this is a little bit more advanced, but I'll share it with you as well. So when you look at competition, it's not just between people selling stuff, right? So something caused you to buy this, I don't know how to say the name, Aeropostale shirt, right? Maybe it's because you like it, maybe it's good quality, which was better than potentially the Nike jacket. But there's also a competition between labor, which is a commodity. So for those of you who work somewhere, your boss, assuming it's an industry with a lot of people coming into it, your boss is trying to find the best workers possible, okay? Which means that you are also competing for a job. But let's say there's only 5 people who can do your job. That means that the 5 of you have a lot of power. You have a lot of room to negotiate a higher pay. But if 500 people can do your job, now there's less room. If 5,000 people can do your job, there's even less. But you know, let's say like your first job is working at a fast food restaurant, which is a great place to learn. But a lot of people can do the job, right? So it does come back to that government influence of minimum wage. You know, should the government say that, well, every job must pay at least $15 an hour? You know, is every job worth $15 an hour of labor? So if there's a lot of people who can do that job, there's not that much competition. Okay. And if there's not a lot of competition, then, you know, generally speaking, without government influence, if there's not a lot of competition, then there's not a lot of value in the work. Oh, what's going on?
Do you have markers?
I do. I'm recording.
We need everything to get into flex.
Economic freedom, as opposed to economic equality, is the freedom to not only start your own business, but it's also the freedom to say, hey, I don't like you, what do you guys, you quit your job at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Right? And now you're working with the city.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was supposed to be a surprise, but surprise kids. Okay, so your economic freedom to take your labor and work somewhere else. That's your freedom, right? Let's say,
Do this.
let's say you all have your cell phones, so just do that while you're, because I know you're not listening to me. Right? That's why I record. You have freedom from the government taxing you too much. Yeah, hey, grade 12s, make sure you're signed up for Flex. We still have a Flex tomorrow. Okay, your mental health day is on Thursday. That's something else entirely. So you're still supposed to be in Flex. Okay, there's a bunch of sessions that have nobody in them.
Wait, what's that shit for you?
Mental health.
Yeah, for what?
On Thursday.
So what happened?
You do
Your Block B teacher should have signed you up for 2 sessions.
For what?
mental health.
Yeah, but for what? Like what happened?
For your mental health.
You go to 2 sessions.
That's for what?
The good ones, the good ones got taken up real quick, so I don't know. But make sure you're in a Flex session, okay?
Which one you in? That's what I was talking to you about.
Okay, economic freedom is also this idea that you can negotiate. So I work in an industry where you can't negotiate your pay. It's just standardized. It kind of sucks, but that's okay. Let's say you work in a company with a salary, and you tell your boss that, hey, I actually produced a whole lot of results. I brought the company more money. You should pay me more of my salary, right? You can do that, right? You can negotiate. You can also work a job where they pay you very little, but it's based off of sales. So if you sell a whole bunch of stuff, you get a lot of money. You get a certain percentage. You're like car salesman, a couple other sales jobs in there as well. You have the freedom to property rights, labor freedom, all this kind of stuff. So economic freedom is this idea that, again, the self-reliance. It's up to you to negotiate what you want, how much you're worth, and to go find a workplace where you match that up. Okay? What else will I say about that? Let's move on. The last one in our acronym, prices, okay, is self-interest. So the textbook defines self-interest as one's personal interest or advantage, which is a very interesting choice of word, advantage, right? It has a connotation. Merriam-Webster defines the term self-interest as a concern for one's own advantage and well-being, okay, which is a bit different, right? Well-being is a very different word. Adam Smith saw the expression of self-interest as an invisible hand that guides people to the common good of everyone. So there's this assumed belief that if you are pursuing your self-interest, that hopefully your self-interest is for the best thing in the long run, and that's best for everyone. But the trouble with that is that a lot of people are messed up here. That's why we have Mental Health Day. Okay, you got to sort yourself out. You also got to figure out, what is good for you now, and also 10, 15, 20 years from now. Because, believe it or not, life is actually quite long, even though it's short, right? Person walking by. So you got to figure out what's best in the long run as well. I just kept walking out there with a bag.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Who is that?
It's one of my grade 9s.
Oh.
Are you cleaning out there? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What the heck?
Go on, Jack. Go on, Jack. Go on, Jack. Hit him with that bat.
Oh, that's your job.
Give him that bat.
That's your job. Okay. So pursuing common good through honesty, integrity, reliability may bring them more customers. This benefits the buyers and sellers. So, let's say you want to make a lot of money. You got to ask yourself, well, how do I make money? One way is to do illegal stuff, scam people, and be a terrible person. Sure, you can make a lot of money, but you can also go to prison for a while. Another way might be to offer the best service possible and just say, hey, you know what? I know how to compete better with these people. Okay? Whatever that is. Okay, maybe you should have a really good product, and then you sell it for a price that you think is fair for that really good product. Okay, there you go. Okay, you may also be asked in your first essay assignment, what are the important aspects, values of a market economy or free market economy? It may look like that. Again, the stuff in bold are terms taken from diploma examples that you might see. So, things like market forces determine quantities, prices, and distributions. What does that mean? Market forces are supply and demand. Okay, so I always love this example. Do we all recall fidget spinners? Okay, there was a time where everybody and their mother wanted a fidget spinner. Okay, so there was a huge demand for them. And then the supply caught up, and then the hype train fell off, right? Boom, it's a market force. Okay, there's market forces for all types of things. So the highest demand for food at the school happens at lunch. Most people don't really want food before or after that, right? But if you do, we still have the vending machine, right? So the biggest demand for food happens at lunch. The supply meets the demand more or less, but some people have to wait a long time. And then lunch ends, and then the demand drops, right? We prepare for tomorrow, okay? Supply and demand, profit motive as well, so prices, distribution. Profit motive is important to a market economy, right? This idea that you can sell your product and make a bit of money off of it. Because maybe you dedicated 10 years of your life before it started making money in the first place, and you want a compensation. Maybe your service makes other people's lives so much easier, and you want to take a little bit of that service as well. Consumer sovereignty as well, that you get choices as a consumer, although I wouldn't rate that very high. Competition, very important, right? Market forces, quantities of things being made, prices that they cost at, the distribution, all has to do with competition. Okay. So my brother lives down in Ecuador, and people, and my other friends from South America, they say that sometimes it's really hard to get vehicles and technology down there. Part of it is because those countries tax these things higher for people to sell them to their country. So it's actually very expensive to get the stuff down there. I think he was saying like the prices for PS5 for like an iPhone is very outrageous, like 2 to 3 times the amount here. Okay. So why would you, if you're selling these products, like maybe you go to a market that's easier to get into. right? Like, hey, Canada loves iPhones, so we'll just send a bunch there. Individual freedom is important for this type of economic system. So that's consumer sovereignty, profit motive, individual responsibility, so individual initiative. Let's say you have a business idea and your friends have business ideas, but your friends are cowards and you're not. You're willing to take risks. That's initiative. So you try to establish this company and try to establish making some money from it. And maybe it takes 2 to 4 years for it to take off. But then by the 10th year, I don't know, maybe you're a millionaire, right? That can happen to people. Okay. Economic freedom as well. We already had a slide about that, so I won't expand on that. Okay. Little government influence in the market, so reduced regulations, protections, safety nets, less taxes, tariffs, trade blocks, all this kind of stuff. The government doesn't get involved in the economy in a more individualistic, in a more individualistic ideology. They just stay out of it. It's up to you, right? This idea that you are smart enough and capable enough to learn these things, make these decisions on your own, hopefully not get scammed by some scam call company from the other side of the world, which happens to a lot of people, unfortunately. Okay. The market, right, so the economy dictates the value of what is produced and the labor that produces it. So, I don't know, maybe let's say there's a shortage of people, of welders in Alberta. There's not enough people who have this professional skill set of welding, so they increase the amount of pay that they'll give. Right? So each company competes with every company and says, okay, there's already not enough welders and I need 3 more. Everybody's paying them, I don't know, $35 an hour. I'll start my guys at $38 an hour, right? $3 an hour more. Maybe that brings more people to you. Let's say there's a surplus, there's extra welders. Okay, so this guy's working for $35 an hour and they're doing a bad job. You can just let go of the person because there's someone who will replace him. Why would I have a lazy employee when there's a surplus? There's a bunch of them out there looking for work. Or maybe you lower the wage. You say, okay, there's a bunch of you. Like, your work is only worth, let's say, $31 an hour, right? Whatever it is. And this final part of the notes isn't fully made, but just some questions to consider. What is the common good? What, if anything, is good for all of us? Who is capable of determining what's good for all of us, or for yourself for that matter? Who's capable of managing the common good, right? Particularly when we look at this idea of the common good with individualism and collectivism. How can we really determine what's best for all of us, and how can we manage that? How do the actions of individuals build towards achieving a common good? Okay, we're going to stop that there.